Charlie Lubin is responsible for me getting this song I'm about to sing. Y'all don't know what it is, but he can. What happened is we were looking for a song, and I had heard this song whenever I was living in Star City, Arkansas, in 1950, before we ever started trying to get in this business. Anyway, in 1960, I remembered the song. I'd heard it the one time, and I heard it on WMPS out of Memphis, Tennessee. Charlie and Ira were on Memphis, on WMTS, and I couldn't find the song anywhere. So I called Charlie, and I said, Charlie, here's some of the words to that song. And Charlie, you want to tell it? Charlie went to the music director at the station, and the man knew exactly what I was talking about, and Charlie sent me the words to this song and the melody. This is a song that I'll always love this song, really, because I think it tells a great little story. So I'm a little nervous. Golly, I don't get a chance to sing in front of this many great artists and vocalists and writers and what have you in my lifetime. So, he made the night a little bright, wherever he would go. The old lamplighter of long, long ago, his snowy hair was so much whiter beneath the candle glow. The old lamplighter of long, long ago. You'd hear the patter of his feet as he came toddling down the street. His smile would hide a lonely heart, you see. If there were sweethearts in the park, he'd pass a lamp and leave it dark, remembering the days that used to be. For he recalls when dreams were new, he loves someone who loves him too, who walks with him alone in memory. He made the night a little bright, wherever he would go. The old lamplighter of long, long ago. Now if you look up in the sky, you'll understand the reason why the little stars at night are all aglow. He turns them on when night is here, he turns them off when dawn is near. The little man we loved of long ago. He made the night a little brighter, wherever he would go. The old lamplighter of long, long ago.
Hello, my friends.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget you can see full episodes of some of your favorite shows at www.countryroadtv.com.
Got a great little rabbit hole for us to go down tonight, courtesy of a viewer, a Dutchman viewer, who sent me the first threads to this interesting rabbit hole that we're about to go down. We will be talking tonight about the Frankist, possible Frankist infiltration of the royal family, the British royal family. And it all begins with this little profile here on Jenny.com. Frederick Walsh, also known as John Frederick Walsh, where it says here in the About section, let me just make it a little bigger, Yehuda Jan Fredrik Volofsky Shore, lots of names there, we're going to get into that, of Rohatyn, took the name John Frederick Walsh in Ireland. He was associated with the Walsh family of Barbados and their shipping business, which may have been the reason the family chose Walsh as their Irish name. He and his wife were Frankists. He was in the Chetsochawa prison with Jacob Frank in 1760. He was the son of Shlomo Shore, also known as Franciscus Volofsky, and he was the ancestor, great-great-grandfather, of the late Queen Mother through two of his daughters. An attempt has been made to obscure this Walsh, Volofsky/Shore ancestry. We're going to branch out into a few directions from here, but the first thing that I would like to say is, why is this important? Why does this matter? The first thing that I would like to address. I posted this on Twitter, and I got two replies along the same lines. One from Survive the Jive, Tom Rousell, and another from a Twitter user I wasn't familiar with. And both of them essentially rebutted this fact, this purported fact, I should say, by saying, why does this matter? This individual would only be giving about 1% DNA to the Queen Mother, if this is true. It's only 1% DNA. But the issue here is, of course, not about DNA. The issue here, let me find what I'm looking for here. The issue here is the tradition, the beliefs, the Frankism. Not the DNA, but the beliefs and traditions of Frankism. Because even if you have only a single Frankist mother, for example, if, hypothetically speaking, that Frankist mother is able to pass down the beliefs and traditions of Frankism to their children, those children effectively become 100% Frankist. And then those children, the next generation, if they are successful in passing down the beliefs and traditions of Frankism to the next generation, then those children become 100% Frankist. Even though the original ancestor was only one grandparent, and technically they only have 25% of that grandparent's DNA, they still become 100% Frankist because they have received the tradition. And this is how traditions and beliefs and a religion like Frankism can be passed down indefinitely. And this is how a whole family basically can be infiltrated in this manner. And this is also why the Frankists did this sort of thing. Because it's mainstream historical record that they did this in other places. And we're going to get into examples of that. So for it to be irrelevant in the case of the British royal family, just because he's only this individual, John Frederick Walsh, is only contributing 1% DNA, it's kind of a silly rebuttal to give. So that's the first point. Traditions aren't the same as DNA, and we're not concerned with really the DNA here. We're concerned with the beliefs and traditions. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, as we should all know, the royal family has a number of things going on with it that are kind of incomprehensible if you don't take something like this into account. If you don't believe that they are at some point infiltrated by you-know-who-ish blood. For example, why are the male members of the royal family circumcised by a mohill? Circumcision is not very common in Europe in general, and especially not circumcision by a Jewish mohill. If anything, you would think that they would go to a doctor for this if they were doing it, I don't know, for some nonsense reason, like they believed it was more hygienic, which is not true, but you would expect them to go to a doctor, not a Jewish mohill. Why go to a mohill? That's the first thing. The second thing is the royal family has all kinds of disturbing connections and behaviors, allegedly, that are consistent with the degenerate and deviant behaviors of the Frankist sect. I'm getting into this issue kind of under the assumption that you know what Sabbatean Frankism was, but if you don't know what it is / was, there's a resource here that I would recommend, a website called ordoabcow.ca, where whoever created this website gets into a lot of very interesting facts, does a lot of good research, explaining how Sabbatean Frankism is deeply enmeshed in you-know-who-ish elite culture, and there's good reason to believe, for example, the Rothschilds were Sabbatean Frankists, and that the Rothschilds were involved in the creation of the Order of the Illuminati. And so there's just a number of, this Sabbatean Frankist movement among the you-know-whos in Europe was extremely popular. And just to give a brief, oversimplistic summary, they believed that the only way to bring about the kingdom of God on earth, to bring about the millennium, was to be as debaucherous as possible, to break all the moral laws that you possibly could. They engaged in orgies. They engaged in pedophilia. They engaged in incest, ritual murder, all these kinds of things. All of the laws and taboos were meant to be inverted to basically force the hand of God into fixing the world. And this was way more popular than you ever could have imagined. Hundreds of thousands of you-know-whos in Europe. And there's on record tens of thousands at least converting to Roman Catholicism. A bunch converted to Islam. A bunch, went into various other sects as crypto-Jews, because one of their main doctrines was to convert to other religions and infiltrate other communities. So, sort of like salvation through apostasy. They loved these paradoxical kind of beliefs. So, I'm kind of assuming that you know a bit about the Frankist history here, but if you don't, go to this Ordo Ab Cow website, read what this researcher has put forth. It's really fascinating, but needless to say, one of the main features, I guess, of the Frankist religion was to just be basically to be what an average person would consider to be totally evil and disgusting and sexually immoral. And guess what? Here we have all kinds of connections with the royal family, with people like Jeffrey Epstein, pedophilia, sex trafficking. Most likely there were worse things going on than that, even. Royal family's disturbing connection to Jeffrey Epstein. You got a bunch of stuff here. You got Prince Andrew accused of participating in underage orgy at Epstein Island. Newly unsealed court documents relating to the late sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein make lurid allegations against the royal family's black sheep, Prince Andrew. But it's not just Prince Andrew, of course. Oh, yeah, here's a picture of Andrew with an underage girl and Ghislaine Maxwell here in the back. Ghislaine Maxwell was, of course, Jeffrey Epstein's right-hand woman, connected with Mossad, connected with Israeli intelligence. Here's a blog post, "This Darkness Must End." Jimmy Savile, who was protecting him for decades, and why. Here's a bunch of pictures of Savile with various members of the royal family. They were quite close. Savile had Christmas dinner with Mrs. Thatcher, Margaret Thatcher, and her husband 11 years in a row. Savile advised Prince Charles, visited Prince Charles a number of times. Jimmy Savile alarmed royal staff with his lewd behavior at the palace. Savile, of course, was a prolific sexual abuser. Very close with the royal family. Open secret among the upper echelon of British society. And there's just so many links here that I can't get into all of it. The whole point is to establish the royal family, in terms of their character, in terms of the allegations made against them, are consistent with the types of behavior that you would expect from Frankists, because this type of thing is the type of thing that Frankists were involved in, and then combine that with the family tradition of circumcision, and British family. Here's another resource that you guys can check out. Kathy Fox blog 2, British royal family pedophile links. This just has dozens and dozens of links from various news outlets. Bishop Peter Ball escaped charges. Royal family intervened. Tons and tons. I mean, I could make a whole live stream just going into these news stories, but needless to say, this is not just one random person making an allegation. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of various examples of them either being accused of this kind of behavior, of intervening to protect people who were accused of this kind of behavior, being closely associated with people who were exposed, involved in this kind of behavior. So, it's kind of the evidence is kind of overwhelming on this front. So, I think that it's safe to say that there's something going on there, and it smells like Frankism. So, let's get back into the actual genealogical research. But before I do, let's look at the chat. How's everybody doing tonight? Ruiner says, survive the jive being philo-Semitic. He hosted that one conference with that one Jewish guy pretending to be a pagan. That was kind of strange. Good Mackie says, hey Germ, I got suspended on commenting YouTube. That's too bad. Didymus says, I've mentioned this before, but the guy who was circumcising the royal family's boys in 1918 was the same guy who pawnbrokered the Romanovs' family jewels for the Bolsheviks. Nice. Babyface Nielsen says, did you catch King Charles having some rite or oath under the direction of a rabbi during his coronation? No, I didn't. Says this was the only part of the whole occasion not recorded on audio, as it was conveniently against the rabbi's religious principles, of course. Zed Dez, thank you kindly, Germ, one of the only channels that's dedicated to information over hatred. Okay, thank you. No, I do not blame all women. Southern Nordic, welcome Southern Nordic. Hope all is well with you and your little one. Cranston Blythe says, do you still read Miles Mathis? The last time I tried to visit Mathis's website, it was like unavailable for me. I couldn't it said that the domain was not working or something like that. So anyway, let's continue on because we have a rabbit hole to go down here. So, after receiving this link, the John Frederick Walsh link, I started to try to look into some kind of primary source, some kind of, even though it says here an attempt has been made to obscure this Walsh ancestry, I really wanted to find some kind of primary source that could support this fact. And it turns out all I could find was circumstantial evidence. Whoever obscured this ancestry did a good job at it. But there is a lot of good circumstantial evidence that supports this. And the first that I will mention is got so many tabs open, so it's kind of, I need a better system of creating notes, I guess. The first is that there are multiple places online, multiple genealogists online, who have made the claim that John Frederick Walsh was a Frankist. And by the way, his original name, this is why he has so many names. This is why they make it so hard for you to slog through all this information, because they really tried hard to obscure their history, their origins. His original name was Yehuda Shor. In Poland, he converted to Roman Catholicism and changed his name to Jan Fredrik Wolowski. Then, allegedly, he moved to Ireland and changed his name to John Frederick Walsh in Ireland, okay? This claim that John Frederick Walsh was originally Jan Fredrik Wolowski is made in multiple places online. The first is obviously this Jenny page, which is managed by a guy called Gunther Kipp, who is well established on Jenny. I mean, he's been around on Jenny for years. He has a lot of different pages that he manages. Oddly enough, it says the page was added by Prince Harry. I don't know how that happened. And then when you look into the revision history, the profile was updated by the Jenny team themselves. So where they got their information is for anyone's guess, but apparently the website Jenny itself added this summary. We also have John Frederick Walsh on Wikitree, listed as Yehuda Shor, a.k.a. Wolowski. And this was added by a fellow called Athol Bloomer, who, as a matter of fact, claims to be a descendant of this family. So he's got like 0.78% only, but he claims to be a descendant, actually, of this family. On another website, I found a mention of this. It was a medieval genealogy website, forum, and we find it here. A woman named Christina Hamill on this sos.genealogy.medieval.narchive.com says that she is actually related to the family also, and that in family trees, the claim is made that Frederick Walsh was originally Wolowski. So it seems that multiple people have presented this information and people who claim to be a part of that family. And these are people who don't seem to have any agenda other than just doing genealogical research. I mean, they're not motivated to invent a Frankist connection to the royal family. You know, it's not something that they don't seem, in that sense, biased. So that's the first thing. Multiple claims that John Friedrich Walsh was a Frankist. The next thing is multiple descendants of Walsh. When you start going into these genealogies, multiple descendants of Walsh intermarried with other Frankist crypto families in the British Isles. First, we have, for example, here's a guy called Michael Casson. They became Kissane. And by the way, we're also going to talk about a number of families, other related families, that did this. They went into Ireland. They took Irish-sounding names, even though they were crypto-Jewish Frankists. Here's the first, Michael Casson, a merchant in Dublin, but he was actually born in Syria, son of a chief rabbi. He moved to Ireland, where his Casson or Casson relatives also lived. His uncle Joseph was also a merchant. Joseph's first wife was a Frankist called Franca or Francesca Mayer, granddaughter of Jacob Frank. Joseph's second wife was also a Frankist named Maria Coleman. Joseph's son Yehuda also lived in Dublin. So there's one example. Another example is one of John Walsh's sons here, also named John Walsh, Captain John Walsh this time, married a Montefiore. The Montefiores were, of course, extremely powerful Jewish bankers, basically close to the level of a Rothschild. So if it were the case that the Walsh family was just some random middle-class Irish family, it would be basically inconceivable for them to have intermarried with the Montefiores. Like when you look up the Montefiores, you know, British financier, extremely powerful, extremely wealthy. He was a Freemason. His family was intermarrying with the Rothschilds. Also the Barrett Cohens. And by the way, the Barrett Cohens were part of the ancestry of Karl Marx when you look into his ancestry. So these families are all related. So we have both the Kissane, the Montefiores. There was one more that I wanted to talk about. The Connors. Originally Kinner, originally Harf. They changed their names so many times. That's what makes part of this so confusing, is they're just constantly changing names. In the records, they're given multiple sort of like close, similar sounding names. They reuse names multiple times, generations upon generations. So things get confused. But Daniel Menke Connor, which is related here, if you look at the page for Friedrich Walsh, top surnames, Walsh, Connor, Grimstead, Carpenter, these are families that this line is related to. The Connors, Daniel was born a Jew in Poland, similar to Volofsky, raised as a Frankist by his parents. He moved with his parents to Germany, there where he served Jacob Frank's daughter. Then he moved to Ireland. He joined his aunt in Ireland. Later he moved with his wife to Fermoy in County Cork, where he served as a soldier. And in Ireland he changed his name to the more Irish-sounding Connor. Interestingly, when you look into the Connor line, you find some influential people such as Bishop Michael O'Connor. He was instrumental in the wording of the dogma of the Immaculate Conception in 1854. So, and then he joined the Jesuits. So here we have another crypto Jew getting into high positions of power in other communities, in other institutions, other than the Jewish one. So these people were not nobodies. They were extremely powerful, influential, wealthy families. And, I mean, basically to see someone like a Walsh, which we're about to get into the what the Walshes did, the Volofskis, I mean, to see someone like him intermarrying with a family that would become the royals of Great Britain, it's, I mean, the way I think about it is like, imagine if you're a Roman and you're fighting the war with the Carthaginians, the Phoenicians, right? And all the rhetoric is about hating the Phoenicians. Their whole race has to be destroyed, salt the earth, you know, all that kind of stuff. And then you find out actually that the king of Rome, or the emperor of Rome, his great-grandma was actually a Phoenician. That would change things. That would be important to know. You know, these are essentially competing powers, and for one to get his to get his children intermarried into a rival power, it's important. It's not insignificant. Okay, even if the later generations only receive 1% of the original DNA, the ideas, the traditions, the beliefs, all of that gets injected into the family. If these people were extremely motivated. These people were operating under the cloak of secrecy. They saw themselves as having a divine mission. They were, you know, part of a religion and a race that has literally hundreds, possibly thousands of years of successful transmission of beliefs and traditions from generation to generation. They know what they're doing. They, you know, they're the experts at it, you know, and I think really child abuse is a part of how they were able to do that. But that's a whole different topic. Anyway, let me take a break and look at the chat here. I feel like I've just been just going a million miles a minute. Didymus says, remember Moses Dabrushka had many fake names. Yes. They love these fake names. They love to change and slightly alter. They love to confuse things because, like it says here, an attempt has been made to obscure this. So, I'll carry on here. Oops. I just closed a tab that I didn't mean to close, but oh well. Let's keep going. So, the next bit of the agenda is the Volofsky family. Here's the so let's just summarize what we have so far. We have multiple claims that John Frederick Walsh was a Frankist, that he changed his name from Jan Friedrich Wolowski. And these claims, some of them come from people who claim to be members of that family. 2, that there are multiple descendants of Walsh, which we see in multiple genealogical websites. This includes Jenny. Captain John Walsh married a Montefiore. So you just followed that, what I just clicked on. Multiple descendants of the Walsh family married into other Frankist crypto families. The Montefiore, the Cassane, the Connor families. Now, let's look at the fact that, so because this lineage has been obscured, when you look at these genealogy websites, you find that there are like parallel genealogies for these people. For example, here's John Walsh. This is like the scrubbed line, the scrubbed tree here. John Walsh, 1735 to 1822. Here's the non-scrubbed version, 1740 to 1822. This version does not include the Queen Mother as a descendant. It only goes into the Cassanes. This version shows the Queen Mother as a descendant. This one goes down into the line of the Beaulion. The Beaulions are the ones that here, this Claude Beaulion, paternal grandfather of Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, and great-grandfather of Elizabeth II. So here we have parallel genealogies on the same website for what appear to be the same person. And they've been sort of split, so one side goes, the scrubbed version is allowed to carry on into the British royalty. The non-scrubbed version only goes on into other cryptos. So when you look, and there's even a third parallel genealogy, Yehuda Zor. Okay, this is the same as this name that we were just given, Yehuda Shor. Okay, his original Hebrew name, Yehuda Shor. And this line is even more scrubbed. Okay, it doesn't list any children, doesn't list any wife. Back here, Eliza Shore, the father, the friend of Jacob Frank, the progenitor of this whole family, basically, Eliza Shore, also lists Yehuda Shore here. No children, no wife. All his other children have children and wives listed, except for Yehuda, the one that basically becomes a black hole in history. And this is consistent across every other source that I found talking about Yehuda Shore. All of the other sources that I found mention Yehuda Shore changing his name to Jan Wolowski. But these other versions don't talk about what happened to Jan Wolowski in the end. Here's a history of a town, the Jews of Rohatyn, by a Dr. Gelber, Jewish researcher. He talks about the Shores, which, by the way, he also talks about orgies. Just to give you some idea here, Frank began his sexual orgies here. The most active in the orgies was the wife of Shlomo Shore, who engaged in these with a will, all with the permission of her husband. She accepted not only the outside believers but also her father-in-law, Eliza Shore, and her brother-in-law, Lippman Shore, who up until then had been more circumspect in their behavior. Okay, so incest, orgies, all this kind of stuff. They released all inhibitions under the influence of Sabbatai V, and even the rabbi from Zabish fell in with them and confessed that he could not forgive himself for his love for the wife of Shlomo. So discussing the degenerate stuff here, but the interesting bit is down here it talks about the family of Shore, who became apostates, included Shlomo, his wife and children, Joseph, Jan, that's the Jan, the Yehuda that we're talking about, Felix, Michael, Ludwig, Henrik, Thomas, and their wives and children, and also their relative, also another Jan Volovsky. Shlomo Shore, henceforth Frank Volovsky. Let me see if this is big enough for you guys to read. Just make it a little bigger. And his brothers became the apostles of Frank and traveled to St. Petersburg on his behalf. So this is another theme among the Frankists. Lots of traveling, lots of sending branches of the family to different regions. In the year 1768, a group of women from Rohatyn joined the group. In that year, the Volovsky sent letters to the Jews in Moravia, Bohemia, Podolia, with a call to accept the religion of Edom, because only that can save the Jews. We find the Volovsky children as activists and messengers, as well as the sages among the group. This was an important family, very close with Jacob Frank, very influential. They composed the leaflets and signed the appeals to the Jewish communities. Later, after Frank's release, when he settled in Brünn, we find a deportation that included Shlomo and Jan and Michael Volovsky being sent to Warsaw by Frank. In December, Frank sent Jan and Ludwig with 2 others to Constantinople. Michael Volovsky stayed with Frank in Vienna. In Offenbach, Lukas approached Shava, the daughter of Frank, with intentions of matrimony, and she turned him down. Jan, Michael, Joseph went and raised money in Warsaw and Turkey on behalf of Frank. When the Shores stopped practicing Judaism, they gained fame of a more constructive nature, although not Jewish. The son of Shlomo, Frank, became secretary to King Stanislaus. Okay, so this is one branch becoming high up in the Polish nobility. He was made a nobleman. His sons went on to become important people in Poland. One became a well-known lawyer, Secretary of State, made a nobleman, received a medal from Tsar Nicholas I, became head of the Justice Department, and the professor, or the Department of Justice, and a professor and deacon to the Faculty of Law at Warsaw. Theodore became an officer in the army, and the same was true for the other son of Frank. Over here, the grandson, prominent among Polish emigres to Paris, no small effect on their political direction. Ludwig, well-known economist. So just the point of all this is these Frankists wormed their way into positions of prominence, and the other branches of the Volovsky family are accounted for. We can read also about them in this publication, where it talks about several dozen Rohatyn followers converted to Catholicism, among them Shlomo Shor, who was given the name Frank Wolofsky, and his brothers Nathan, who became Michael, Yehuda, who became John, Yitzhak, who became Henrik. Eventually, Lukas pursued his career with the Polish king's court, but nothing else is mentioned. Oh, it says here, by the way, this is kind of just hinting. Many descendants of the Wolofsky family became significant cultural figures. Suffice it to mention the pianist and composer Maria Zhimanovska. Okay, so I said a lot right there, but what is the point? The point is, almost all the other members of the Wolofsky family are accounted for. We know what happened to them. They went into positions of prominence in places like Poland, in places like France. Where did John go? What happened to John? I haven't been able to find anything. Let's put 2 and 2 together. We have multiple people from that family, descendants from that family, claiming that what happened to Jan Wolofsky was he changed his name to John Frederick Walsh, and he went to England claiming to be Irish. A number of other Frankist families on record existed in Ireland. The Connors, the Cassins, the Montefiores, wherever they are. What the hell happened to Montefiore here? Too many tabs, my friends. Anyways, you guys remember the Montefiores. You could go back into this, rewind the stream if you want to see. The Montefiores that were intermarrying with the Walshes. I think if we put all of these pieces together, it seems to confirm this claim that indeed John Frederick Walsh, the great grandfather, great grandfather of the Queen Mother. Let's find it. Is it great or great? Let's see. What the heck? How many pages do I have to scroll through here? Anyway. Are we going to find it? We're getting close. There we go. Third great grandfather of the Queen Mother was, in fact, this crypto-Jewish Frankist. I mean, that seems like the logical conclusion to come to. So, and once again, this tradition can be passed down 100%. It's not like DNA. Traditions are not like DNA. They either get passed down or they don't. And these people were extremely well practiced at passing down their traditions. They were good at it. They knew what they were doing. And this is exemplified, by the way, in other examples like this. Like Michael Kissane, born in Ireland, moved to Australia. And after multiple generations, it says here, after his death, his wife ceased. Oh, this is his wife. He was reared in the Frankist tradition of his grandparents and his wife Anna. The Jewish origins of the family were hidden from the younger children of the family. There are a number of examples of these people converting, allegedly, pretending to convert, and then multiple generations later, the descendants throw off the cloak and openly practice this Judaism. There's this one. There's one of with the Montefiores. When you start following them, they move to Mexico and openly become Jewish again, for example. There are examples of this, of crypto Jews pretending for multiple generations and then intermixing with the locals, and then suddenly one of the descendants decides that they don't want to hide anymore, and they just become openly Jewish again. So it's not about the DNA. It's about their ability to successfully pass down this ideology and tradition. And I think when you look at the way that the royal family behaves, when you look at all the allegations, when you stack up all the evidence, it's hard to deny this. So let's check in with the chat one more time here. Good Mackie says, how they managed to hide this all from the general public still astonishes me. Yeah, well, you know, it's the type of thing that most people either don't care enough about, or they don't really appreciate the significance of it. There's so many parts that have to be. I mean, look at this website explaining the origins of Frankism and the significance of it. I mean, look at part 1 has 22 sections. Part 2 has 21. 23 sections for part 3, etc., etc. I mean, there are so many elements in this history. There are so many facts. There are so many ways that they've managed to obscure their origins, to obscure their intentions, their agenda. I mean, in a lot of ways, a lot of it is sort of an open secret, hidden in plain sight type of thing, where they'll say things publicly that the average person just doesn't know how to interpret. That is really the essence of an esoteric doctrine, is they're able to say things that mean one thing to the uninitiated and something completely different to the initiated, or it means something sort of simple to the uninitiated but something way more complex and nuanced and involved than for the initiated. So that's how, there's a lot of ways that this works, but that's the sad fact of the matter is that most people just don't care enough. They've never spent the time creating a context within their minds, developing the context to understand something like this. So, the average person, politically speaking, they're just completely out of the loop, and it's crazy how much history is out there that even experts who know about one part of the history, they don't really connect it to other parts of the history. They don't draw the same sort of conclusions as we do. I mean, even people who research things like Frankism, there's a lot of researchers out there who talk about Frankism, and they try to downplay how evil it was. So you just have to be able to put together a lot of moving parts and see history from a real bird's eye perspective. And most people just don't put the time in. They don't have the interest. So Vic Vinegar says the, quote, real Jew question exists within the Abrahamic matrix and is significant for their eschatology. Nothing to say about that. Some people getting into pagan versus Christian debate in the chat. Didymus says, not the heckin' royal family Reno. That's my glorious Western heritage. Yeah, that's another aspect of it is, you know, when you there are multiple stages of like sort of waking up to the world we're really living in. And at first, you know, for the average normie, stage one might be sort of just blind, sort of celebrity worship of something like the hardcore normies are celebrity worshiping the royal family. Then you might, you know, take step one, which is a liberal critique of the royal family. You don't like the royal family because they represent British tradition and inequality and you know, all that kind of like leftist Marxist critique of the royal family. So you go from liking them because they're celebrities to disliking them because they're just privileged old white people with lots of money. And then you might take the next step, which is liking them again because you break out of that like leftist critique mode and you start to appreciate your own heritage, your own culture. You start looking for aspects of like tradition and hierarchy to appreciate. Okay, so that's step 3. You start to like them again because they represent white history and traditional hierarchy and things like that. But then if you're like me, then you go up to step 4, which is realizing that these people are not legitimate. That even though it appears like they represent traditional European hierarchy, culture, etc., that in fact they are like usurpers that are wearing your traditional culture and hierarchy like a skin suit, and that it's that they're not people to look up to, that unfortunately they are like I said, you know, wearing your traditional culture and hierarchy like a mask or a skin suit, and taking advantage of people's, you know, desire to follow a great glorious leader. So it's like an oscillation back and forth, and then you end up sort of synthesizing multiple steps and realizing, yes, traditional white culture and hierarchy are good things, I want to support traditional culture and hierarchy. I would love to support a genuinely good royal family or, a kingly ruler, but these aren't the legitimate people. These aren't the ones that we should be supporting. And it's amazing how there is a pretty good number. I'm surprised none are in the chat right now. A good number of Brits that have a strong knee-jerk reaction to this type of analysis. So, it's one of the things that in the past, talking about the royal family or talking about the way that the you-know-whos have infiltrated British nobility, you get people pretty upset. And I knew when I posted that page about John Friedrich Walsh on Twitter, when I made that post, I kind of expected Survive the Jive to come and make a response, because he has been one of the number one defenders of the British nobility and British royal family that I've seen, and it's, in my opinion, totally misguided. And I don't think he'll ever change his mind on it, because I think he sees himself as literally related there. So, what can you do? Good Maki says, hierarchy is necessary. Families require hierarchy to be functional. A father who sees his children as equals to him deserves no respect. True. Absolutely. Living the dream. It's very late here. Sorry to hear that. Catch it in the morning. Hugo Alexander says, they think Robin Hood and Arthur are alive. Shame it's the troll under the bridge that is ruling. Yeah. Didymus says, how am I supposed to defend the role of Britain in 2 world wars if you're telling me that they're Frankists? LG, royalty need money, same as us. That's the root of their issues. What? So. How long have I been going for here? Let me see. Us, that's the root of their issues. Only an hour. Only an hour. So I'll go for a little while longer. If you guys have questions, we can do ask me anything kind of a thing, or we can start looking. We could start looking, trying to peel apart the this lineage that leads up to the Queen Mother, and see if we can unearth any little clues that they were still keeping that Frankist tradition alive. I'm going to play a song. I'm gonna play a little song and take a 1-minute break, and I'll be back to do whatever you guys decide. Either come up with some questions, or I'll just start going through these Wikipedia pages and do some live research. Let's see, what can we watch? What can we listen to? Any requests? Any song requests? I don't have any just right off the top of my head that I wanted to play. Here, this looks cool. We'll see what this is like.
Sick of all the ads like this one? Just head to adskiller.com, click on Activate Now.
I'll be right back. That was pretty good, huh? I don't know. I didn't really listen to it. What'd you guys think? Here I am. So, what did you guys decide? Freeform research, Wikipedia browsing, or questions? Let's see. Goodbucky says, this is fascinating, Germ. I've never heard of most of these people. Thank you. Rick Vartigian says, subversive bastards. Nice work, Germ. Thank you. Human Drill, what do you think is the future of you-know-whoish power? It seems like their power is growing weaker. I don't see how their power is growing weaker. I don't know. It's hard to predict. I think there are a number of outcomes. I think at some point that they would like to reveal themselves as sort of open rulers of the New World Order. I do believe in some sense that there's going to be some kind of revelation within the West to get people to overthrow their current governments and accept a New World Order type government that would pose as being virtuous, that would pose as being more fair toward especially white people. There's just so much. There's been so much of a force against the native white European Western population that I feel like it's being done so openly, so brazenly that they want pushback, so that at some point there will be an overthrow of the existing governments in order to get people to accept the new government. But this is all speculation. By the way, since I'm talking about the British, I'm wearing my, let's see if you guys can see it on the camera. I'm wearing my authentic, where is it? I don't think it's going to show. It's too bright. Authentic Boyd tartan from the lowlands of Scotland. I had to wear it for the discussion on the Brits. Living the Dream asks Q. Question. Vaguely remember a tribe connection to the royal Guelph/Welf lineage mentioned briefly once in a video somewhere, but I can't find any definitive links on Google. Ever heard anything on that? You're talking about like the Guelph and Ghibelline fight sort of a thing? I'm not. Benjamin Disraeli, Hugo says, was a Guelph from Venice. Interesting. I'm not. I would have to brush up on that whole chapter in history. Bobby Barrow says these people always wanted a crazy world like this. No need for pushback. Maybe that's all it is just chaos on chaos on chaos, and they want to establish this like two-tiered system of the world where the elites live in their untouchable technocratic utopia and the peasants live in this chaotic mass for eternity. Reminds me of, like Gilad Atzmon. He has this theory that I've recommended multiple times in the past, cognitive partitioning in the future of the West, where the Jews practiced for centuries in Europe essentially a breeding program, a eugenics program, where they would marry off the sons, the smartest, most intelligent sons of the leading rabbis to the beautiful daughters of the leading merchants, wedding money with intellect to create a partitioned race where the elites of the race are extremely smart, extremely wealthy, extremely skilled, and the lower end of the race, the other 85-90% of the race are just stupid and easily ruled. So it could be that they are planning such a partitioning for the world as a whole, creating, this eternal defenseless underclass, chaotic underclass that would be ruled by a higher caste of elites for eternity. So that's possible here. Good Mackie says, the problem I see for them, the technocratic utopia is unachievable. There is a limit to technology, and we might have already reached the peak. I agree with that. I agree that there's a limit to technology. We're basically just reinventing the wheel at this point in a lot of ways, and I don't believe that there's going to ever be like 0-point energy. I don't believe there's going to be anti-gravity. My view of physics as a whole sort of precludes those things. There's never going to be interstellar travel. So we're basically stuck with the world as it is, and we're basically at the peak of technology as it stands physically. The physical limits of technology have already arrived. The returns of investment are getting smaller and smaller in terms of technological advancement. So, but we already live in a world like that. When you see, TikTok and other Instagram and other like social media has revealed this to people, is that there is a class of people out there, people I've never met. I've never met a single, maybe one or two. I don't know. I don't even know. But there's a class of people out there who basically have so much money, who have so much time, who have so many resources, that their whole life is just essentially pursuing like hobbies and pursuing pleasure and, doing all kinds of just luxury activities, whereas people like me have to work 50 hours a week to barely make it for their family. And that's, I don't see that dynamic going away in society. I see that dynamic becoming more and more entrenched. Hugo says Giorgiani is much more of a spook than Survive the Jive. 100%. Giorgiani's insane. Giorgiani claimed that, like, my favorite claim from Giorgiani was that 9/11 was an inside job, but the government covered it up to protect us. That they were just trying to protect us because they didn't think that people could handle the truth about 9/11, so they just, covered up the inside job to protect us. He says a lot of kooky stuff, but credit where credit is due. Giorgiani, as kooky as he is, he's a very interesting thinker, and he's got a wide range of facts in his mind that he's able to recall at ease, and I appreciate that from him. Illuminati says, have you ever read any Wilson and Blackett? They clued me into the Welsh/Cymry connection with the Lost Tribes and Britain's hidden history and the origins of Christianity. No, I haven't, and I'm personally not a fan of the whole, like, Lost Tribes theory. My favorite alternative theory of, like, the origins of the Brits is actually the Trojan theory that they used to have back in medieval times, that Britain is named after Brutus the Trojan. That's an interesting alternative history that I'm willing to entertain. The Lost Tribes angle I'm not so keen on. So let's see. Let's see what these descendants of John Friedrich did. Zeddez asks, where did white people come from? They came from Atlantis. And Atlantis was Doggerland. Oh, Wilson and Blackett cover Troy. That's practically the centerpiece of their research. Interesting. Maybe I'll have to give them a look. Didymus asks, what happened to Thomas Bodden-Rees? Did he get the McDonald's scholarship after all? Well, Thomas Bodden-Rees, I don't know how you didn't see this. He made a video revealing that his whole persona was a joke, and that he's actually a gay liberal man. Who knows about Thomas Bodden-Rees, man? He's just an interesting character. He's a very interesting fella. I don't know what to think of him anymore. So I'll leave it at that. It's very amusing. He's very amusing. Let's see. Let's check this guy out. The grandfather of Queen Elizabeth II, descendant of John Frederick. What did he do? He had a pretty big nose, that's for sure. Landowner. Keen interest in forestry. Contemporaries described him as an unpretentious man, seen in an old mackintosh tied with a piece of twine. He enjoyed physical labor. He's a regular, gosh, what was that guy's name from The Fountainhead? Highly decorated, highly honored. Doesn't seem like there's much to be said about him. But the social engineers back in the day were often women. I wonder what his female descendants did, like Lady Marie. See what she looked like. Doesn't really say much about their activities on Wikipedia here. Unfortunately, I'd have to start looking into other websites. Let's go back a little. Well, what do you guys think? Should we call it a stream? Call it a night? This website would be pretty interesting to get into at some point. Talked about a few of these things in the past, like the connection of Queen Elizabeth I with these occultists. This guy gets into a lot of good details. I mean, this is a lot to read. Worth spending a couple hours just reading through this website. Let's see where he... Introduction. We'll just read the introduction to this website so you guys can get an idea about what this guy's talking about here. A cosmic conspiracy. Gotta love it. Look at this piece of hair is just popping up right there. A cosmic conspiracy. The fundamental mythology of Western civilization is that it represents the fulfillment of centuries of human intellectual progress, which have over time distanced itself from superstition, relegating any belief in the supernatural in favor of an objective conception of the world based purely on reason and empirical observation, which supposedly culminated in the establishment of the separation of church and state, or secular democracy. However, while the United States has been able to maintain the illusion of being a democracy and bastion of liberty, it in fact operates under a system of legalized bribery called lobbying, which allows special interests to effectively purchase the cooperation of designated politicians, such that the society's laws increasingly serve the few and make dissent ever less possible. In 2014, two prominent U.S. political scientists, Martin Gilens and Benjamin Page, authors of Democracy in America, published a study of national surveys of the general public conducted between 1981 and 2002 that concluded that, quote, the central point that emerges from our research is that the economic elites and organized groups representing business interests have substantial independent impacts on U.S. government policy, while mass-based interest groups and average citizens have little or no independent influence. Rather, a facade of democracy is deliberately conjured to hide a more sinister agenda. The American society could be the most sophisticated form of coercion in human history. Unlike the open totalitarianism of failed experiments like the former Soviet Union, America has been able to elude more profound criticism by hiding its methods of control behind institutions that maintain the illusion of freedom. As outlined by famed psychologist B.F. Skinner, instead of controlling populations by punishing dissent, it is possible to induce their cooperation through means of positive reinforcement. So, he says, America is an oligarchy. This is too much for me to read right now. My jaw is starting to hurt. But you guys get the point. This guy is introducing the question as an issue of how did this oligarchy come to be? Who really controls this? Who devised the strategies and methods by which such an occult oligarchy could operate? And of course, the logical answer leads us to secret societies, Bilderberger Group, Knights of Malta, Opus Dei, intelligence organizations, Protocols of the Elders of Zion, the Communist Conspiracy, Skull and Bones, etc., etc. Going back in time, it becomes the occult societies, the occult religious societies, the Rosicrucians, the Freemasons. If you've been following my channel, you know all about this. So, let's call it a night there. Let's call it a night. Talking for so long is hard work, fellas. So, thank you all for joining me. Hope you enjoyed. And I'll see you all in the next one.